Hello guys and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how to make your styles for your text, dimensions, leaders, and tables. And of course I will show you also at the end of this video how you can use it and why it is so handy to have these things set up beforehand so that it will make your job much easier. So when you're drawing something, you don't have to set it up every single time. So without further ado, let's get into this video. So guys, to get started, let us open a new drawing. So you click on new, of course, and then here, instead of selecting a template, let us start a drawing without a template. So open with no template. You can either choose imperial or metric, but in this tutorial, we're gonna just use metric. So after a drawing has been opened, it is actually a empty drawing. It doesn't have any settings. As you can see, it just have the standard AutoCAD settings. And this is what this video is mainly about, setting up this part, which is actually step one. So first of all, let us set up our text style. And to set up your text style, you would have to click on here, standard. Of course, first in annotation, and then standard, and then manage text style. So if you go in your text style, you can see there's only two text styles. That is annotative and standard. So we're going to do a new text style. So you click on new and it will ask you to name this text style. For this tutorial, we're going to name this text style text and then underscore one. This is the first text style we're going to do. One means one-on-one. But since we cannot use this sign here, which means one-on-one, because you cannot save it, it doesn't accept these type of characters. We're gonna just leave it as one. So you press OK. So now we made a text style. It is called text underscore one. Now here you can choose the text you want, the text font name that you want. I'm gonna choose ISO CP. I love this one. You can also choose a different one if you like. But I recommend using one that says ASHX at the back. That is because when you're drawing in 3D and you have a shaded view, if you choose a next one, which is filled, like these here, for example, or this one, then it will be, it will not be colored on the inside, because in shaded view, everything that is hatched or colored, it would be empty. So I suggest use one with SHX at the end, meaning it is just a line text style, a line font name. So we will use ISO CP SHX. And of course, you can use your own. I like the height of my text to be 2.5, and that is exactly 2.5 millimeters. So now we're not going to use oblique angle. That means the text will not be angled, just be flat. The width factor, we just leave it standard. We're not making it upside down. We're not going to make it backwards. We're not going to make it annotative. And we're not going to use big font. We're just going to leave it plain, keep it plain and simple. So when you press, you can press apply. So now we have one text style. To see how this text style looks, the best thing you can do before you make the rest is, of course, write something. Text style. As I said before, this is just a line text, which is perfect, especially when you're drawing in 3D, because this text style, as I said before, it is not going to be filled in. And when it's not filled in 3D shaded view, it would appear differently. So when you're making your text style, the best thing is to stick to line text. So not shaded or filled in text. I will show you an example. Like I will copy this text and I will paste it. And in this text in my properties, I will change the text, the font name. Let's see, font. Let's see. Oh, I cannot change the font name. Thought I've got to change it. Obviously, I can't. Oh, yes, I can. If I select it here. Okay, so you just have to double click and then this text editor will appear. And then here we will select one that's it's shaded. Now, this one looks, personally, I find this one looks better, but it's not practical. So if I choose my view and I change, actually 3D view, and I change it to no, visualize, and I change it to shaded. Let's see, shaded. You cannot see anything is happening here, but when I go to my layout and I select this and I said I don't want to display, but I want it to show shaded or legacy hidden, and I press print. For example, this is just an example so you can see what it looks like. This is what will happen. So here you can see that the shaded is away. So it looks kind of like a sketchy text instead of just being plain text. So that is why I advise do not choose any text font name that is shaded or that is filled in. So now let's go back to our annotate and then go back to our textile. So this is the first textile. This is one-on-one, as I said. Now we have to make other textiles. The reason why is because when you're drawing, depending on what you want, what type of scale you want, you have to select your text. This is a very good example. I will show you an example. Here we have two viewports. This viewport, and a viewport is basically a window. You can check this out in my other tutorial, the tutorial before this one, and I explain what a viewport does. And this viewport, which is a window of what I've drawn in my model space, here you can see that the text, even though there's two different things, is the same size, the text of this dimension. But if I go in my model space and I go here, you can see that this one is really small compared to this. It's the same drawing. It's just that I use different dimension scales. So meaning this one is dimension scale 1-on-1, as you can see, 1. And this one is dimension scale 10. And because my viewport is scaled according to the size that I need, this one is scaled to 1-on-1. And this one is scaled to 10. So even though they have two different scales, they have the same height of text, and that's what you're looking for. It shouldn't have different sizes just because they're on a different scale. And that's the reason why we have to make these different scales for hand, because when you're drawing, you don't want to have to every time make a different style. You want this style to be already in your template so that you can just use it. Makes your life way much easier. As says my channel, we are just doing easy cut. So teaching you how to draw easier, how to draw more faster and easier. So this is a textile 1-on-1. Now we need to, of course, make more textiles because you're not going to only draw 1-on-1. You're going to also draw 1-on-10, 1-on-2, 1-on-5, and 1-on-100. So let's keep it to that. So now if you do again a new textile, this one will be 1-on-2, And now the difference between one-on-one and one-on-two actually is obviously multiplied by 2. So here, the text height will be 5 instead of 2.5. And of course, everything else will stay the same. Very easy, right? Now we have to make, of course, we have to apply it before you select a new one. Now we will make a new one starting with your one-on-one. This is very important too. We start with our one-on-one because it's better and easier to multiply. So now we have one-on-one, and this one is going to name 1-on-10. So press OK. And of course, we have to multiply the text to 25 because 2.5 times 10 is 25. We press apply, and the same thing. We're going to begin with 2. Now we're going to make one text 1-on-20. And here again, we got to multiply by 10, so it will become 50. The same thing we're going to do for 1-on-100. Text 1-on-100. And of course, this one we're going to multiply by 100. So it will become 250. Apply. So now we have 1-on-1, 1-on-10, 25, 1-on-100, 250. We have 1-on-2, which is 5 millimeters high, and 50. We also want to have, well, you will also want to have 1-on-5. And of course, this is 1 multiplied by 5, which is then 12.5. Apply. You also want 1-on-50, which is text underscore 50. And this one is going to be 125 height. Apply. Let's see. You have 1-on-1, 1-on-10, 1-on-100, 1-on-2, 1-on-20, 1-on-5, and 1-on-50. In my experience, this is the most you really need. So you could actually add more if you want, but I find, in my experience, I find this is all you need. Of course, if you're drawing big drawings, I would suggest just do 1-on-500. Like if you're doing a landscape drawing with a house on it in a big landscape, and you have to draw a situation drawing where the house is situated in a neighborhood or something like that. So since this one is 1-on-50 times 10 again is 1250. So this is actually how you make your textiles. This is very important. Oh, one more I missed. So now we have these, but also I would like one textile to that I can automatically decide what height I want. So again, we make one textile. This one we're gonna call default. And why I'm calling it default is because it don't has a height. This one you would have to put your height on your own, depending on what you're drawing. So this gives you the flexibility to don't be stuck on these we already draw, well, we already defined, but you have a textile that also you can change in your property the height instead of being just one specific height. We will press apply. And in this one, of course, you would have to put the height on 0, which is very important. You have to set the height on 0. So now we can close this. And now these are my textiles. So now if I copy paste this, so I can show you the flexibility of this. So now if I say, okay, this one is 1-on-1, but let's say I want this one on 2-on-2. So here you drop down and you drop the menu and you say, no, I want it to be 2-on-2. As you can see, the size doubled. So instead of having to go in my properties and changing the properties every time, you can easily just select a different textile. That is why textile are so handy to set up beforehand, because then you can just have to select. So now I want 101 on 10. As you can see, this one is 1 on 10. And I guess you catch the drill, guys. So that is why textile, as I said, textile is very important, it's very handy, it's very quick if you set it up correctly, and it's very easy to set up. So I would suggest take some time, think about what sizes you need, and then make those textiles. And of course, you would have to start with an empty drawing so that you can later I will show you then how to use this drawing after we have made all the textiles to save it into a template. So now that we have done our textiles that we need, now let's move on to the next step, which is making our dimension styles. And in the same way, dimension styles is the same has the same function as a textile, which is just to so you can select one instead of having to make every time a new style or changing your properties every time you choose a text. So this way it will be much easier. Your settings will be set already. All you have to do is choose your scale that you need. So let us start off with this ISO 25. Let us click on new. And this one we're going to call dim underscore 1. This is not a annotative, and we're not going to use, yeah, you could use it for all dimension styles. Yeah, it is very important actually. Now let's continue. Now, first of all, we're going to start with our dimension lines. First of, I would suggest always to do by layer instead of by block. The line itself could be by block, but the line type and the line width could be by block, but I would say just do everything by layer. So depending on the layer you choose, it would just automatically print it that way. Now the spacing between the baselines is actually how may I say? Baselines is let me just show you. These are baselines. And these is actually the distance between lines on each other. So when you choose baseline, this spacing, this is actually the spacing between when you use the function baseline. The function baseline is this one. So that means that it would always start from 0 and then it will choose the next. So you would have to choose the next point. And then start back from 0 and then you choose the other point. And start back from 0 and you choose the other point. That is actually baseline. Continuous now is actually this. Continuous means it will continue drawing a dimension as you go. But baseline, I will demonstrate, is just, of course, you would have to press space because it would start the last dimension you drew, it will start at that point. But if you press space, it will ask you to select which dimension you want to start from. So I will select this dimension, and as you can see, it started from 0 and then it went next. Okay, let me just grab it here and then grab it here. As you can see, it is not very nice because it's so up under each other. That means that my baseline is set to too small to begin with. So for my baseline to automatically have the correct distance, I would have to set it from in my dimension styles. Here you can see my baseline is 10. Let's see why it is not working properly. I think I have to choose the correct dimension style, of course. And now again, I will choose my baseline. And as you can see here, you see the distance is automatically set to 60. You can either do this and it will go to the top, or you can do this way and it will go to the bottom. So if I select this and then this, as you can see, it automatically has the correct spacing. So that is actually how you use baseline. It's very handy when you're drawing really big buildings and you have to draw all those windows. You have to dimension all those windows that are at the end of the building instead of having to do them manually and then spacing them off. This way you can just continue clicking, 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 and it will just automatically stack them up one under the next one. So that is your baseline spacing. Furthermore, I would like to also, so here you can see baseline spacing. Furthermore, I would like to show you also other stuff like break size. Here you can see when you're using two dimension overlap each other, AutoCAD give you the option to break the spacing between, break one of the dimensions. I think it is this button right here. Let me see which one, this one. So this is your break. So that means that you will break one of the dimensions to overlap the next one so that it won't be right on top of each other. So the person who is reading the drawing can see that this dimension is not, so it won't overlap. It will just make it look neater and more, um, um, how you say it. It will make it look more neater and understandable, more, um, yeah, yeah. How do I say it? What is the word for it? But it more visible in your drawing, especially when you have so much dimensions one on top of each other. Believe me, it becomes so chaotic to see all those dimensions. People can easily make mistakes. So drawing neat, as I emphasized in my first video, is very important. When you draw neat and precise, those two together will make your drawing look way much better. And of course, with spacing, correct spacing, and be consistent, basically. Now here you can see this is your text dimension, your text height in a dimension line. Here you can see this is the offset from your dimension line. Extend beyond the dimension line. This is your extension. And of course, extend beyond the tick line. This is your tick line or your arrowhead. And here's your extension line to the top. This, the same was here, is also here, which is, this is your dimension line, extension line, your arrowhead, and of course you extend it beyond your dimension line to the bottom. No, extend it beyond the tick line to the bottom. Extend it beyond your dimension line is on the side. Here we will also have your fixed length extension lines, and of course your offset from your origin. I like to set these because then I find it just look neater, because when you're drawing and the dimension starts exactly here, believe me, when you print a drawing black and white, you cannot tell the difference. Rather, is the dimension extension line you're reading, or the drawing itself, or the box or the window. Whereas if you have a little spacing between the two, then you can see exactly where the dimension line ends and where the actual shape begins that you're trying to dimension. So these is actually a basic information that you will know. Also, you can actually change this arrowhead. You can also put your own blocks to change this arrowhead. This here you can see my example of my arrowheads. I love these balls because I find they look much neater than those ticks. I drew my own block for a tick, and this you can also choose in my dimension style, so it will make it look like these. Of course, you will have to draw one, meaning one on one first, so you can see how it looks, and you can tweak it as you go. And then of course I will show you then how to make the different scales, dimension styles. So let's get back into it. Now we go back into our empty drawing, and let's try this again. New dim_1 for one-on-one. Continue. Let's start with lines, by layer, by layer, by layer. Our spacing, I I rather 6 millimeters because then I will make my extension line 5 because my I prefer my spacing to be 6 between the dimensions, and since it is 6 total, I rather 1 millimeter between my object and my dimension when it starts. So meaning your offset from origin, which will be 1. As you can see, it changed. Extend beyond dimension lines. Let's see, a fixed offset. Let's put it to 5, as I said. Let's see, yeah, 5. And extend beyond dimension lines. Let's just, yeah, you can put this at 1 to make it easier to scale later on. The extension line itself, you can also give a color, but I prefer just leaving it by the type of layer I selected. It'll automatically do it. We will not suppress the extension lines. We will also not suppress the dimension lines. This is actually, it will disappear. You don't want this. And also not that these will disappear, because these are very handy when you're trying to see what the person is measuring, like what you're trying to measure. If you follow one line, you can put a ruler and you can say, oh, they're trying to measure this line. Here, they're trying to measure this line. But if they don't exist, let's see, extension line, then it's kind of harder to see, as you can see. So we will leave it on. Then let's go to symbols. And this is the example I was giving you, that arrowheads, you can also decide to do your own arrowhead. Like if I choose a block, right now we don't have any block in this drawing as this is a new drawing. But of course you would have to draw your block first if you want a specific block. But let's just use what AutoCAD has standard, which is the closed field. You can also choose different ones, but I rather this one if I'm using the standard AutoCAD size. Now this one I like to double it. So the size of the scale, I will double it in 2. The break size, let's just put 1. And the mark, let's just leave it at 2.5. Let's see. No, actually, let's do 5. It is not even visible as yet. Let's just leave it at 2.5. Position above the dimension line. You want your text to be above your dimension line. And this one you can put a 45. And yeah, this is actually a jagged this is actually a type of dimension that you can put the dimension style in. So we will leave this at 45 and this one to 1.5. Then the text. Since we already created our text styles, here you can choose which text style you want to combine with the dimension style. So let's choose text style one-on-one, which makes sense. If the dimension style is one-on-one, we want also a text style to be one-on-one. Now with the text itself, you can either choose to leave it white, which I find is great because then you can identify the text easier than if your text is also the same color as your dimension lines. But you can also choose by layer, which is also good. By layer. Let's just leave it by layer. The fill color, we don't have any fill. We're not doing a frame around our dimension style. You can, but for this tutorial, we're not doing a frame around the dimension style, which is the text. Let's see. See, the frame, we're not using it. You can always choose to put a frame around it, but then you can do this apart in your properties. When your text is vertical, it is above your dimension line. When it's horizontal, when your dimension line is horizontal, like this one, it will be centered also, and this one is also No, not centered, above. This one will also be centered. And of course, you would like your text to be from left to right. If you choose from right to left, it will be backwards. So let's just choose from left to right. Offset from dimension line. This will be also 1 to make life easier. Oh no, not a frame, sorry. See the frame? No, we're not using any frame. Align with dimension line is very important because if I choose horizontal and I have a vertical dimension, it will be, the text will be horizontal. My dimension line would be like this. So let's say if I have a big number, then it'll just take up too much space. Then our spacing won't be good enough either. And this also seems a little weird. So let's just say align with dimension line. So whatever direction dimension line is facing, my text will also face, so that my spacing will be nice and even and I won't have text overlapping each other. Now fit, you can either text or arrow, which is I find the best one. So what will happen is if my text is very long, it will just either show my text or my arrow. So first of all, it will do the arrows. So my arrows will stay in, my arrows won't disappear, but my text will go on in a leader. So that is good. We will not always keep text between extension line because let's say if I want to move my text, I won't be able to move it. Now, if you have, when text is not in the default position, place it beside the dimension line with a leader, or over the dimension line with a leader. That is good. That is good. You want this. An overall scale of 1 and fine tuning. We don't want to place text manually. We will want to place it by itself. And the dimension line between extension line. Draw the dimension line between extension line. Let's just leave it this way. Really, AutoCAD already thought about everything. Since we're working metric, we will leave it on decimals. My position, let's just do, yeah, we can do 2 zeros after the comma. We will leave it on comma. Round off, we won't round anything off. Prefix means like the text beforehand. So if I do this, this will be my prefix, which means diameter. But you don't want any prefix because you don't know what type of text it is beforehand. You can also do millimeters after the text, but then if you like, I mean to say it can, but I find it just take up more space. All drawings are mostly millimeters, so it's obvious that it's millimeters we're talking about. So you won't have to specify also that it's millimeters if you want. You can do it if you like, if you find it's more informative for the person that's reading, but mostly most people, if you're drawing in metric, you're drawing in millimeters. We won't scale it, and this one leading means that everything that is lower than 0, it would take away the 0 in front, but we don't want this. I want to see 0.6, for example. I do require, though, take away the trailing, which is great because then you won't have a lot of zeros behind the comma just because I choose precision is 0, 0. So let's say its precision is 0, 0, 0, 0. What will happen then is if I have a round number, if I choose this, then all my numbers will have, even though I have 6 millimeters, all my numbers will have 0, 0, 0, 0 at the back. But if I choose trading, to suppress the trading, if my number is 6, it will just be 6. Done. So I suggest choose this because then less text you have, the better. This is for your angle dimensions. You can also decide to do 0.00 as you can see, and also, as I said, remove the trading. So if it's 60, as here you can see, it's just 60. But if you remove, don't suppress the trading, then it will just show 60.00 because my position is 0, 0. If my position is 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, it would just give me too much numbers. So the best thing is to do position is 0, 0. That's basically more than enough, I find. You can do more if you want, But I find it just makes text even more longer, which makes it more crowdier, and more crowdier means less visible, and yeah, it just becomes a big mess. So trading I want to suppress. And let's see, alternative units, we're not going to use this. We don't need any alternative units. And this is actually like if you want to change a unit to a different type, so like some for inches and some for millimeters. We're not going to do that. And here we have our tolerances. Let's just leave this how it is. Press OK. And as you can see, we have our dimension underscore 1. And we're going to close this. So now that we have created our first dimension style, now we can check it out to see if it looks good. This is text one-on-one. So let's see. This is dimension style also one-on-one. As you can see, it has the same height. It looks okay. You can play with this however you like. If you like other type of arrowhead, if you find the distance is okay. Like if I draw a box, and now I can measure my box. As you can see, my distance between my extension line and my box has 1 millimeter, which is good. I like to then first place my first dimension line 6 millimeter distance from my origin. That makes it more neater. If I can also, yeah, this is basically the basic. This is the first dimension line. So now with this dimension line, since everything is set correctly, we can then make the others just like we did with the textiles. So you can click now again in dimension style manager, select dimension underscore 1 and click new. And here, this one will be dimension style 10, continue. And here we will set baseline on 60 because the spacing will be now 60 since my dimension style is 10 times bigger than the first one we just did. The extension beyond dimension dim lines will be also 10 times 10 times 10. As you can see, it looks very strange here, but that's because this is not set properly. The arrowhead will be times 10. This will also be times 10. My break will also be times 10. My text will also be 1 on 10. You see, it looks much better now. My offset will be 10. And as you can see, it looks much better. It looks kind of weird here still, but believe me, it will look good. As long as you set everything properly. Actually, this one will also be 25. Everything is set properly. Okay, close. So now if I select dim underscore 10 and I place it, just randomly placing something, and I say I would have to dimension offset will be 60 as you saw. As you can see, and this is what I explained you. So if the text cannot fit between the arrows, it won't suppress my arrows. What it will do, it will make a leader and it will put my text here to the top. But if I stretch it out, it will automatically place it again in the center. So that is actually how you make your text style, dimension styles. Now again, we will do the same thing. New, we'll delete this part, 1 on 100. We started with 10. Remember, we started with 10 now instead of 1. We can also start with 1 if you like, but 10 is also good. Doesn't really matter. Actually, just remember how much you have to multiply it by. So we started with 10, so this is 1 on 100. So we will actually just multiply, add on an extra 0 to everything. Break size, text is 1 on 100. Offset will be 100, and the rest will stay the same. Okay, so that is that. Now we have 1 on 2. We started with 1, so now we have to multiply by 2. So this will be 12, 2, 2, 10, 4, 5, 2. This really could stay the same because this is already multiplying it by textile height. The text will be 1 on 2, and the offset will be 2. And these stay the same. Okay, now we will start with this one to do 1 on 20. See, starting with 1 on 2, continue. And then here you will do, since we started with 2, now we will do 1 on times 10. So 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, text 1 on 20, and 0. Okay, now let's do 1 on 5 dimension, starting with 1, which is the easiest one to multiply. Then we do continue. So first of all, by lines, 5 times 6 is 30. 5 times 1 is 5. 5, 25. So here you can see 5. It was 5 times 5 is 25. Here we will do 5 times 2 is 10. 5 times 2 and a half is 12 and a half. 5 times 1 is 5. This one we will select 1 on 5. And the offset will be 5. Continue. And again new, starting with 5. 1 on 50. Lines again, times 10, times 10, times 10, times 10, times 10. This is 12 and a half, so 12 and a half times 10 is 125. This one is 50. This one doesn't change. Here, 1 on 50 and 50. Continue, and the same we will do for 500. So we will start with 50, so times 10. Starting with lines, 3,000, 500, 500, 2,500, 1,000, 1,250, 500, stays the same. Text is 1 on 500, and then we have 500 here. So now we basically done the same we have done with the textiles. Now we also need a textile as a dimension style, just as a textile called textile default. So we will press on new. We will delete this and we will call this default. And default means that it will take whatever measurements you multiply by in your properties. So it will multiply everything. So let us start. The offset will be then, yeah, this is kind of difficult because your offset, it start at 6, but let's just start like this. And these two, and then of course the arrowhead we will leave the same. But what is important here is that your textile will be default. You see how first it was OneonOne and you couldn't choose the text height, but now since I choose default, you can enter a text height. That means it doesn't have a specific text height. It just multiply for whatever overall scale you give the dimension line. And what I mean by this is if I choose dimension line default, which is this one, and I drew my default line, you see, since we started OneonOne, it will be OneonOne. But if I choose a textile and dimension style, and I came here and I said this dimension has an overall scale of, let's say, 10. As you can see, it multiplies everything. So my distance will be multiplied, my fixed distance, my text will be multiplied, my offset will be multiplied. So you can easily choose a measurement that, let's say, you don't have. One of the styles you don't have. Let's say we didn't make one on 30, let's say. So here we can say, okay, my overall scale will now be 30 because I want to draw, or 3, so you can see it, because I want to draw 1 on 3. So here you can see, even though we made this a fixed height and a fixed text and everything, since it's default, it will just multiply whatever overall scale you set it to here in your property list, which is here. So that is how you can make all your dimension styles, and you can just, instead of having to manually set the properties, you can actually just have these set for hand. And of course, it won't cover every single aspect while you're drawing, but it's a big help. And like, as I said, the default is also a very big help, because with this default you can just say, let's say I don't have 1 on 3, so I'll just make it an overall scale of 3 or overall scale of 2.5. As you can see, it will just automatically change also the height. Like, let's set it back. See, it's just automatically change the height based on the value you set it to. So that is how you can make your dimension styles. So next time, in the next video, I will show you then how to make your leader styles and your table styles. It's basically a little more same as the dimension style and your text style, but the table style is a bit much more settings as you have to set to be able to make it nice and neat. So I will see you in my next video, and don't forget to subscribe, guys. Bye for now.